You ever have one of those moments where you're looking around and thinking, wait, where did everybody go? Like, people were there when life was fun, when things were exciting, when the world seemed to love you. But the moment things got tough, quiet, messy, they just vanished. No explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. That's the kind of moment Johnny Depp found himself in, not once, but over and over again. And now, after a long silence, he's finally opened up about what it really felt like. Now let's be real, we've all seen the trial, or at least the parts that blew up on social media. The courtroom drama, the viral clips, the jokes, the opinions, millions of them. It was like watching a reality show, except the person at the center wasn't playing a character. He was just trying to survive something deeply personal, while the whole world watched, judged, and laughed. It was messy. Public. And honestly, painful to witness, even if you weren't fully invested. But what a lot of people missed was what happened after. After the cameras left. After the lawyers wrapped up their final statements. After the world had moved on to the next viral topic. Because the headlines might have faded, but the pain? That stayed. The silence that came afterward wasn't peaceful. It was deafening. That's the part Johnny talked about in his first interview since the trial. And what he shared wasn't just a recap of legal battles. It was a window into what it means to be broken, and still standing. He sat down with Jonathan Dean for this interview, and from the first few seconds, you could tell, this wasn't going to be some clickbait piece. He wasn't there to stir up drama or relive old fights. He was there to speak from the heart. And his first words said everything, this isn't about clearing my name anymore. It's about finding peace. Those words. They hit different. Because they weren't angry. They weren't defensive. They were tired. Honest. Human. And the more he talked, the more he revealed something most people don't understand until they go through it themselves, how betrayal can be quiet. You don't always see it coming. Sometimes it doesn't show up as a fight or an argument. Sometimes, it's just a slow fade. A phone that stops ringing. A friend who suddenly doesn't reply. A room that used to be full, now just echoes with silence. Johnny said something that stuck with me. He said, the trial ended, but the loneliness didn't. And if you've ever gone through a dark time, you know exactly what he meant. Because when the world seems to turn on you, you start to see who's really there. And who never really was. And that hurts more than anything someone could say to your face. You see, most people thought that once he won the trial, things would go back to normal. That the world would throw a big celebration, roll out the red carpet, welcome him back. But that's not what happened. Instead, he found himself walking through a world that felt unfamiliar. Foreign. Cold. Like the spotlight that once made him a star had turned into a searchlight, hunting for flaws, mistakes, anything it could twist. He described it like being a stranger to the life he used to live. Like walking through a town where everyone recognizes your face, but nobody really sees you. And maybe that's the scariest part of fame, being known by everyone, but understood by no one. And yet, in all that chaos, all that abandonment, one thing remained. The people. The fans. The ones who stuck around. Who defended him when it wasn't cool. Who believed him when it would have been easier not to. And Johnny didn't forget that. In fact, he said, their support kept me standing on days I didn't want to stand at all. That's not a casual thank you. That's raw truth. That's a man saying, you saved me. And it's beautiful. Because sometimes, it's not a huge gesture that pulls you back from the edge. Sometimes, it's a kind word. A message. A voice saying, you're not alone. He also spoke about fame in a way that was deeply personal. And honestly, eye-opening. He said, people want to own your story, even when you're still writing it. Let that sink in. Imagine living a life where every move you make is captured, dissected, judged, and reassembled by strangers. Where people who've never met you feel entitled to your truth. That's not just overwhelming, it's exhausting. And he wasn't bitter when he said it. He wasn't playing the victim. He was just telling it like it is. Sometimes, being famous means giving up your privacy, your peace, your right to be misunderstood without being crucified for it. And the scariest part? You don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. Then came something I didn't expect. He talked about silence. Not the awkward silence we all hate in conversation. The powerful kind. The kind that speaks louder than any scream. He said, sometimes, silence is the only thing they can't twist. And I got chills. Because there's so much power in that. In choosing not to explain. Not to defend. Not to fight every lie. Just, be still. Not because you're weak. But because you know who you are. And that's what made this interview feel so different. So real. He wasn't trying to fix his image. He wasn't searching for pity. He was reclaiming something that had been taken from him, his peace. And maybe even more than that, his voice. You could tell he's still healing. Still figuring things out. And that's okay. Because healing isn't a straight line. It's messy. It's quiet. It takes time. And it takes letting go of the idea that you owe anyone an explanation for how you survive. One of the most honest parts of the conversation came when he started talking about friendship. About how not everyone who stands beside you when you're shining will sit with you in your shadows. He said, not in those exact words, but with that same weight, that you learn who your real friends are when you're no longer useful to them. When you have nothing left to offer except your truth. He said that fame taught him something heartbreaking, that some people are only around because they benefit from your light. And when the light dims, so do they. That's why now, he's focused on keeping his circle small. Real. Loyal. Not loud. Just present. And here's where it got really personal. He talked about how fame, the very thing that gave him the world, also took a lot from him. His peace. His privacy. His safety. When people think they know you, they stop trying to understand you. They create a version of you in their heads. And that version? It becomes louder than your real voice. He said he doesn't want that anymore. Doesn't want to be seen as a character in someone else's story. He just wants to live quietly. To play music. To laugh again. To wake up and feel okay in his own skin. And you know what? That's not a lot to ask for. That's what every human being deserves. He said that after all of this, after the chaos and noise and betrayal, what he wants isn't a comeback. It's peace. Not headlines. Not applause. Just peace. A quiet life. One where the people in it aren't there for what he gives them, but for who he is. Where trust isn't a transaction. Where silence doesn't mean loneliness, it means safety. He looked back at the trial and said he learned more about people than he ever thought possible. Not just about those who left, but those who stayed. And sometimes, it's the ones you least expect who show up for you. The strangers. The quiet supporters. The ones who don't need to be seen, they just want you to know they're there. And that's why he keeps talking about his fans. Because they reminded him that even when the world is loud and cruel, kindness still exists. Support still exists. People who care still exist. And in a world that often feels cold, that's a light worth holding on to. So now, after everything, he's not chasing the spotlight anymore. He's walking away from it. Not in anger. Not in defeat. But in freedom. He's choosing a life where his worth isn't measured by magazine covers or award shows, but by the peace he feels when he wakes up in the morning. And that, my friend, is powerful. So let me ask you something. Have you ever gone through something hard, and the people you thought would be there, weren't? Not because they were mad at you. Not because of a fight. Just because, they didn't know how to handle your darkness. If you felt that, you're not alone. And you don't have to stay silent about it. Your story matters. Your pain matters. And your healing. It deserves to be seen. Just like Johnny's. So if this video made you feel something, if it helped you breathe a little easier, then talk to us. Leave a comment below. Tell us what you've learned about silence, about trust, about walking through fire and coming out the other side. And if you want more conversations like this, real ones, about real people, not just the drama but the heart behind the headlines, then stay with us. We're not here for the gossip. We're here for the truth. And one more thing. If you felt connected to this story, give this video a like. It helps more people find it. People who might need it right now more than you know. And if you want to hear more stories that go beneath the surface, more voices that deserve to be heard, subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you here. Not just as a viewer. As part of a community that listens, that feels, that doesn't look away when things get tough. Because in the end, like Johnny said, sometimes, silence is the only thing they can't twist. But when you do choose to speak, let it be real. And let it be yours.